Good morning on the 8th of February 2022. Tvååker gård, Two Oaks Farm, 60th parallel in Sweden. It is time to move the sheep into the last quarter of one of our two grazing systems, winter grazing systems. For those who haven't seen the setup before, there's the shelter in the middle of roughly 2 hectares. And then the 2 hectares is surrounded by a permanent perimeter fence. Then there is a division into 4 quarters, so there is a line going from the shelter to the perimeter fence there, same from the shelter to the perimeter fence there, and then there is also a line going that direction to the perimeter fence and over there. Then into each of these quarters, sorry about the wind, hope you can hear me. From the shelter runs a path into each of the quarters, ends roughly in the middle of each quarter, and then there is this is also permanent fencing, so that stays. And then here you already see the mobile fencing, which I use to then divide the quarters in yet 4 more quarters. So in winter there are 16 paddocks in here, and that's sort of the only permanent bits that I need. Then these rows of wooden fence posts, and then the mobile nets I just drape over the fence posts like this, and in between the metal points to stand on the ground, because in winter here you can't get those points in the ground usually when it's frozen, and thus we move them around. So every time they get one of these paddocks, they stay there, very much depending on the quality and the availability amount of grass there is still left over. They can spend anywhere from 4 to 11 days so far in a paddock. And now I'm getting finally to what I was really going to show initially, and that is the amount of green grass in this quarter. I would say probably this is the best quarter I've got, and it was grazed last in July, and probably this very last bit here that I'm looking at now may have been grazed in early August. And since then it has been recovering, regrowing, and it is the 8th of February, and look at the amount of green grass still in there. And then note that you can actually see the grass. That is not normal at all. This is a very lovely day. I'm out here in just sweater, no gloves. It's probably, last time I looked in the thermometer, it was about 2 above freezing, 2 Celsius. It feels as if it's a nice spring day with a bit of a breeze. That makes it a bit cool, but otherwise I don't need a coat with weather like this. If I'm not out too long, that is. This is not normal. Normal temperatures for this time of year, February should be the coldest month. You should not be surprised to see minus 30 Celsius. So it's more than 30 degrees warmer than it could reasonably be. Minus 20 would be very normal to expect. So it's more than 20 degrees warmer than you would reasonably expect. And there should be anywhere between half a meter and a meter of snow lying here now. And it is just a few centimeters at the deepest places. This winter, well, when we moved to Sweden 7 years ago, there were still winters that we thought were very dramatical. There was a lot of snow, and we did see minus 29.7 to be exact. That is really cold if you're not used to it, coming from Holland and then a few years in Scotland as well. Minus 29.7, it hurts. But I doubt that we'll see that ever again. You never know. But the trend definitely in all those winters, every winter I've had to conclude that it was warmer than I thought, based on the data that I could find, the warmest winter so far. And every year I have to renew that record. I'm not really keeping an eye on the official records, so I'm not entirely sure if it's true that every winter is a lot warmer, but I'm absolutely sure that this is the hottest winter we've had here, and it really makes for difficult circumstances. Now here in this paddock that I will let the sheep into in a few minutes, this gets more sun than any other paddock, even though it's all connected. There are trees around, and then there's the wind factor and everything coming together. This quarter here thaws the quickest, so there is really not much snow left. But the paddock that they're in right now, or the last one that I've added in a strip grazing fashion, so yeah, the quarter that they are in now, you see the path running there, it's into the middle, and then there's within that quarter, behind the path is the first one, and then there's another one there, another one here, and another one here. They've had this we're talking strip grazing, so I gave them the first quarter behind the path first, so they had to go out of the shelter to the end of the path, and then they could walk into that paddock and strip it, graze it. When they were done with that, I added the second one, and then the third one, and then the fourth one. So every time you add a paddock, they have a lot of new grass to find underneath the snow. There was still snow then. And you see, hello ladies, just a few more minutes. You see, there is a lot more snow here, but it's, with all the thawing and refreezing, it has become very crusty, hard, very difficult to dig through. You see the holes where they've managed, but you also see that they are mostly walking on top of the icy snow, so they can't really dig through anymore. And underneath all this snow there must still be a lot of grass, but it takes them too much energy to get at it. It's not worth the effort. And so actually the last few days, when I checked their gut fill, actually now it's pretty good. The gut fill is the triangle here between the ribs and the backbone. There's a little triangle here, and if it's a hollow, then you know that they've got an empty stomach. Well, now it's pretty good. Hello, Agnar. You're getting a bit impatient. But a few of them have have lost a bit of condition. So that is the backbone here, and I feel the amount of muscle and fat on there. And there's an ideal condition, which they've had the whole time until just a few days ago. The whole winter they've been in perfect condition, so there was really no trouble finding food for them. And just the last few days the condition has gone down a bit, and just because it was so difficult for them to get to the grass hiding underneath the ice. So in this last paddock they've only been 4 days, and yesterday I've actually had to feed them hay for the very first time this winter, simply because I didn't have time to move them into this paddock, which will be a feast with so much green grass. And that's why yesterday morning, I had to give them some hay for the very first time. Had I been at home the whole day, I had to go away for a day, then there would have been no need. I would simply have moved them in here and they would have had their feast already. Now they know what's going to come. So what I'm doing now, this quarter then is completely finished. That said, there is still a lot of grass here, so if the thawing continues now, or if when it eventually thaws away in spring or maybe late winter, you never know, it might be very early this year, I can always take them back into this quarter for a few more days, maybe up to a week of grazing still. So that option is there. But so now I have to move them in here. This is that quarter division that I talked about initially, from the shelter to the perimeter fence there. That stays. This coming grazing or this coming growing season, when I can dig and drill into the soil again, this is going to be a permanent fence as well. And the same goes for all the other quarter divisions. So then all the perimeter fence, the paths and the quarter divisions will be permanent, and then only the paddock divisions will be made with those mobile net fences. That is easy to set up and to take away, and if I would have to make permanent fences of everything, that would really be undoable, especially because in the growing season I don't have 16 paddocks in this grazing area, but 32. So that making all that permanent is just undoable, and you could really not move around anymore within it either. So that's what the net fences will be for. So to get them into this new quarter, I will have to first get them to go to the start of the fence, or the end, or the path, I mean, sorry, there in the middle of this quarter. And then through the shelter, there's a door on that side, and there's a door on that side, which is currently closed. So I'll have to get them through there, and then they can go up the path and into this paddock. And when they're done with that, I'll remove that net fence. There's already another one set up to go to the corner there. So if I remove this one, then I'm basically adding a new paddock. And this fence I'll then set up from the path to that corner, and so on and so forth. I can easily move them around. Right, that's what I'm going to do now. I'll see if I can film some of that, but for a lot of it I'll need two hands, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I can show you this as well. This is the shelter, obviously, and I'm on the path leading into the quarter that they are going to graze next. And this is for now my sort of temporary setup. The other path into the first quarter runs there, and two pallets form a temporary gate. I'm building proper gates for that still, so I can swing that like that. So if I want them to go into quarter one, I swing the gate like that. They go that way. I've now had to hack it free of ice because the pallets were completely locked in ice, and then swung it that way. Now they can go this way. With a bucket of oats, I'm moving around the shelter to the other side. I'll have to lure them onto the path. Usually they figure that out pretty quickly if I do anything in the shelter. Gives me time to open the door here, which is still a bit of a temporary setup as well. The plan for the coming growing season is also to build a more proper shelter here. This was very quickly put together, and something more permanent and somewhat larger, because there is a plan to have more animals. I might have 6 more moving in soon, if all goes as I hope. So now they can come in here and go out there, and then when they're all on that side, I can put the gate over there, and then that is sorted. So now I have to get them here. One has figured it out already. Let's see what happens if I whistle their food call. The one there is the clever one. He figured it out already. So this is nice about using a bucket and some treats for them. They follow me rather than that I have to drive them, which is a way nicer, a better relationship with the animals. There they go. Round the corner, and once a few have done that, the rest follows. Now it's going to be interesting because Mr. Ram here does like to use his horns if he's and one hasn't gotten it. I have to keep him at bay with the bucket. He would rather like to hit me. Una. And Una. Una is a bit wary of the ice that has built up here. I think, oi, and then when they get their heads in, yep, it is a challenge. Dodging. make a run for it. Hope that I'm faster than the ram is. Oh dear. Well, maybe. And out the other side. I'll feed them on the path. There we are. Whew. So perhaps you're all seasick now, and I'm out of breath. They'll probably go for the oats a little bit that I sprinkled here, but they may be far more interested in the green grass. Ooh, look there. How does that taste? So some of this green may be dead. I'm not sure, it just has been preserved in that case by the snow and the low temperatures for now. So now that it's exposed and the temperatures are above zero for a few days, at least during the daytime, maybe it will all soon turn yellow if it is dead. But maybe a good part of it is still alive, and then it will remain green. Anyway, they haven't had food like this, so easily accessible and so fresh and green and so full of nutrients, for a few days at least. I think they've seen what is in store for them. Heads down and eat. A few more observations about the winter situation, which I haven't really gotten around to yet in all the videos that I've made. I mentioned that there are 16 paddocks in this system at the moment, but during the growing season it's 32. This is because during winter there is very little, or probably actually no, chance of overgrazing. But I think I best start in describing the grazing I always mix that up. The growing season situation. And during growing season, plants can be overgrazed. If they are grazed once, that is not overgrazing. But after that grazing, they will start to recover. In about 3 days after grazing, then the plants will start to recover. They draw nutrients from their roots because photosynthesis is very much limited, because most of the green, or sometimes all of the green above ground parts, have been eaten, and so the energy has to come from the roots. So the plant basically sacrifices root mass and nutrients in there to build green above ground parts again, so photosynthesis can start again. And then once that takes off properly again, then the roots can start to regrow. Recovery, full recovery in this climate at the height of the growing season, which is around late June, July, takes anywhere, depending on weather, between 1 and 2 months. And you have to be very careful if you want to graze holistically and make sure that your plants get stronger and taller and better all the time, that you do not regraze until full recovery, not just of the above ground parts, but also of the roots, has taken place. You can see that, but that will be a much easier thing to show when we get into the growing season again. But yeah, you have to keep in mind that a lush green above ground meadow does not necessarily mean that the plants have fully recovered. Their roots might still be much reduced and are still recovering. And then if you graze again before they are fully recovered, then your plants will get weaker every time that you regraze before recovery is fully finished. It's a bit like training your muscles in some ways. You can train very heavily and get a huge muscle ache afterwards. And if you retrain again before your muscles are fully recovered, you do more damage to your muscles. And if you then train again before you're recovered, and again, every time your muscles actually get weaker and more damaged. And eventually you will get serious injuries that way. But if you train heavily and have your muscle ache, but let it fully recover and then train again, even if it's very heavy again, your muscles will get stronger and stronger and bigger. Much the same happens, with a few differences of course, in plants. And the essence of holistically plant grazing is that you don't regraze until plants have, all the plants in your paddock, at least the plants that you want to have fully recovered. That means that you can't have your grazing animals grazing in one area for more than 3 days. And there are ways to circumvent that a little bit with strip grazing, but that will be for another time as well. Although there are bits of info about it in previous videos. But that means that your paddock has to be small enough that your animals can have a heavy impact on the grass, because heavy impact trains them better than a low impact. And then you move them on before the 3 days are over. So it has to be small enough or big enough, or you have to have enough animals to heavily impact that paddock within 3 days, and then you move them on. And you should not let them get back into that paddock until full recovery has taken place. So that is, in a nutshell, the growing season situation. In winter it is very different, because there is basically no growth, and so there can also not be recovery during the no growth season. In that case, you can graze longer than 3 days, definitely. You can, like I said, with the snow covered bit, you can even have them return to that area and graze again a few days or a few weeks later, because nothing will have happened. Recovery has not taken place yet. So multiple grazings, it doesn't matter. And that's why having fewer and larger paddocks in winter is fine. It means basically that I have less work moving them. The the limit, practically, I ended up with 16, because even with the mobile fences, in a situation where your ground freezes, I need those wooden posts to put the net fences up. If that wouldn't have been necessary, I would probably still have used the 32 paddocks. But just to limit the number of wooden posts that I had to put in before winter, and they all come from living spruces in our own woodland that you see here. So that is a lot of work. So I ended up with 16 instead, and that works fine. The thing is that if you have a larger area, by the time that they are done finding the easily findable and accessible plants, they have to start searching, and with every bite the search for the next one becomes harder. And if there is snow and ice involved, then also the work to not just find it but also expose it adds to the whole workload, and eventually energetically it's just not worth to take that next bite anymore, because you have to spend more energy than you gain from eating that bite. So by the time that finding that next bite becomes energetically useless, you should have moved them on to the next paddock already. And the larger your paddock compared to the number of animals you've got, the more grass will be left uneaten by the end, because it's just more difficult to find the next bite if the paddock is larger. I hope that makes sense. Excuse me. Not COVID. So in that sense, 32 paddocks would have been better. I would have more efficiently used the grass in that way. But all in all, 10 animals in a paddock this size actually works fairly well, unless there is that ice buildup. They fairly efficiently make use of the plants, and by the time that they start to, that I notice by the end of the day that they don't get their gut fill completely filled anymore, then yeah, it's time to move. But then also most of the grass has been efficiently used, so it works out pretty well like this. So knowing that the winter circumstances have been very unideal with these re-thaws, or these thaws and refrosts, I think it is very, very worthwhile noticing that even then the grass is still this green here, and they really are enjoying this. There is no bleating, nothing else, nothing other than eating going on. So even Agnar the ram there is not interested in headbutting me right now. It is all about getting nice, easy mouthfuls of green grass. In a proper winter situation, you wouldn't see the green underneath the snow, underneath up to a meter of snow, sometimes more, but it would still be there, of course. It would be preserved better than it is now, and that basically means that there would be more of it. It would be a bit more work to find it, obviously, but there would be more of it. And also the thaws and refrosts, and then a bit of snow again, and that thawing, and then more snow, means that it all has, or a lot of it, is not upright anymore. It's lying down. So with a new snowfall, which is bound to happen at some point, it will be harder again to find this. Whereas if it's just one, the frost starts and it doesn't go away again until spring, and snow just adds and adds and adds, and it's all fresh, soft snow, which is easy to dig through, that grass will be upright inside that snow much more, and makes it probably more efficient and easier to find. And yet still, in these insane, ridiculously warm circumstances, there is this amount of grass available to them in the cold season. Holistically planned grazing. It's brilliant. Thanks for watching.